Hi everyone, it's Scott from Maths Logos. In this video we want to look at dividing fractions, and I'm going to try and show you lots of different ways that this can be asked. Let's jump into our first example, and this is just simple division. So we've got 2/3 divided by 1/5. Now when we're dividing by something, that's the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. If you've been using our lesson booklets, then you'll already know how to take the reciprocal of a number, but if we look at the reciprocal of 1/5, what we do is we swap the position of the numerator and denominator. So the reciprocal of 1/5 is 5/1, which is 5. And so what we can say is 2/3 divided by 1/5 is the same thing as 2/3 multiplied by the reciprocal of 1/5, which we said was 5/1. Now sometimes you might hear a simple mnemonic to help you remember it, maybe something like keep, change, flip. So keep the fraction on the left, change the division to multiplication, and then flip the fraction on the right. Or when I was at school, I think I learned turn the number you're dividing by upside down and multiply. So something like that might help you to remember it. But mathematically what we're doing is we're multiplying by the reciprocal. Once we're in this form, we can just multiply our numerators. So 2 multiplied by 5 is 10, and multiply our denominators. 3 multiplied by 1 is 3. And that's my answer. Okay, let's look at our second example. We're doing 8 divided by 1/4. I'm going to start by writing 8 as a fraction. So that would be 8/1. And then as before, I'm going to say that I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of 1/4, which is 4/1. Or you could think of it as keep, change, flip. So keep the number on the left. I've kept it as 8/1. Change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and then flip the fraction 1/4 to 4/1. I can then multiply these fractions together. So 8/1 is just 8, and 4/1 is just 4. So 8 multiplied by 4 is 32. And that also makes a lot of sense because we're doing 8 divided by 1/4. In other words, how many quarters go into 8? Well, we know that there are 4 quarters in one whole. And if we've got 8 wholes, then we've got 8 times 4, which is 32 quarters. Give these two questions a go, and then I'll run through them. Okay, let's have a look. So 5/6 divided by 1/7 is equal to 5/6 multiplied by 7/1. Multiply your numerators. 5 multiplied by 7 is 35. And then 6 is on the denominator. In this second example, we're doing 1/8 divided by 2, and I'm just going to rewrite that 2 as 2/1. I can then say that dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal of 2, which is 1/2, and I'll do 1/8 multiplied by 1/2 to give me 1/16. In our next two examples, we're going to look at where we have to simplify our fractions, either at the end after we've done the calculation, or at the beginning before we do it. Let's have a look at this one. 1/3 divided by 5/6. Well, I can say that this is equal to 1/3 multiplied by the reciprocal of 5/6, which is 6/5. 1 multiplied by 6 is 6, and 3 multiplied by 5 is 15. And then we can divide through by the common factor, which is 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 15 divided by 3 is 5. That's 2/5. So in the next example, we're going to look at individual simplification. So I can simplify this fraction on the left, and I can simplify this fraction on the right, and then divide them after that. If you've seen our previous lesson on multiplying fractions, then you'll be aware of cross-simplifying, but we're actually not able to cross-simplify at this point. For example, 18 and 75 both have a factor of 3, but I cannot divide through by 3 on this numerator and by 3 on this denominator to give me 25. That would give me the wrong answer. If instead I was multiplying these fractions, then I'd be able to do that, but I'm not, so I'm not able to do it at that point. What I am able to do is simplify the 18/45 on its own and simplify the 50/75 on its own as well. So let's do that off to the side. 18/45. So 18 and 45 have the highest common factor of 9, so I can divide through by 9 on the numerator and 9 on the denominator. 18 divided by 9 is 2, and 45 divided by 9 is 5. I'll then look at my 50/75, and they have a highest common factor of 25. I can divide through by that on the numerator and denominator. 50 divided by 25 is 2, and 75 divided by 25 is 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this original calculation as 18/45, and instead of writing that, I'm going to say that's 2/5 because I know they're equivalent fractions, divided by, I'm going to keep the division symbol for now, 50/75, which we said was 2/3. Now what I can do is I can treat this as I did before. 2/5 divided by 2/3 is the same thing as 2/5 multiplied by the reciprocal. And now that I'm multiplying these fractions, I can cross simplify if I want. And what I mean by that is I can divide through by this factor of 2 on the numerator and this factor of 2 on the denominator. But I can only do that cross fractions when I'm multiplying them, not when I'm dividing them. I can then do 1 multiplied by 3 to give me 3, and 5 multiplied by 1 to give me 5. So my final answer is 3/5. Give these two a go, and then we'll look at them together in a second. Okay, let's look at this one. 3/4 divided by a half is equal to 3/4 multiplied by the reciprocal of a half, which is 2 over 1. And then what we can do is we can do some cross simplifying. So I'll divide through by my factor of 2 on the numerator and 2 on the denominator, like that. And that would give me 3 multiplied by 1, which is 3, and 2 multiplied by 1, which is 2. Alternatively, you could have multiplied your fractions together. 3 times 2 is 6, and 4 times 1 is 4, and then simplified 6 over 4 to 3 over 2, like that. But either of those would work. Now let's look at individual simplification. So I'll simplify 25 over 75, which would give me 1/3. And then I'll simplify 14 over 21 by dividing through by 7, give me 2/3. 1/3 divided by 2/3 is equal to 1/3 multiplied by the reciprocal of 2/3. And then I can do my cross simplifying, so divide through by 3 on the numerator and 3 on the denominator. And then I'll do 1 multiplied by 1, 1, and 1 multiplied by 2, which is 2. So my answer is a half. If you're enjoying this video so far, please subscribe to the channel and drop the video a like. It really helps us to grow, and we appreciate that a lot. Thank you. So let's look at this one together. It says spot the mistake, and it gives us some working out. But what I'd like you to do is if you pause the video and see if you can spot the mistake in the working out, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, let's have a look at it together. This is quite a common mistake people make. 2/3 divided by 4/9 is equal to 3 over 2 multiplied by 9 over 4. And the mistake is this: they've taken the reciprocal of 2/3 to give them 3 over 2, and they've taken the reciprocal of 4/9 to give them 9 over 4. But the problem is they were not meant to take the reciprocal of the first fraction. So this calculation really should have been 2/3 multiplied by the reciprocal of 4/9, and they did that part right to give them that, and then they should have taken it from there. If you're using our lesson booklets, you can now complete exercise 1, or you can watch the rest of the video and do that at the end. Okay, let's look at some examples with mixed numbers. 2 and 1/3 divided by 1 and 1/6. First thing I'm going to do is to convert these mixed numbers into improper fractions. And the way I like to do that is do 3 times 2 to give me 6. Write that over the denominator of 3. And what that step does is it turns that 2 into a fraction over 3. So 2 is 6 over 3. And 6 over 3 is equal to 2. I then need to add on that third because it's 2 and 1/3, like that. 6/3 add 1/3 is 7/3. We'll then look at our 1 and 1/6. And same idea, I'll do 6 multiplied by 1 to give me 6. I'll write that over my denominator. And what that means is 6 over 6 is 1. I then have to add on my 1/6. 6/6 add 1/6 is 7/6. Let's put that back into our question. So 2 and 1/3 we said was 7 over 3. And we're dividing that by 1 and 1/6, which we said was 7 over 6. 7/3 divided by 7 over 6 is the same thing as 7/3 multiplied by 6 over 7. I can then do some cross simplification. So I'll divide through by a factor of 7 on the numerators and on the denominators. And remember, I can only do that at this point when I'm multiplying the fractions. And I'll divide through by a factor of 3 on my numerator here and 3 on my denominator here. So I'm going to rewrite these fractions so it's just nice and clear. I've got 1 over 1 multiplied by 2 over 1. And 1 over 1 is just 1, and 2 over 1 is just 2. So my answer is 2. Pause the video and give this question a go. Okay, let's run through it. So 3 and 3/4, I'm going to convert that to an improper fraction off to the side. 4 multiplied by 3 is 12, so that's 12 over 4. And then I need to add on 3/4. 12/4 add 3/4 is 15/4. And then I'll take my 1.5. 2 multiplied by 1 is 2. Put that over the original denominator and add on the other part. So 2 halves and 1/2 is 3 halves. Then substitute those back in place of our original mixed numbers. So I've got 15 over 4 divided by 3 over 2. And what I'll then say is 15 over 4 divided by 3 over 2 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. That's 2/3. And then at this point, I can do my cross simplification. So I've got a common factor of 3 in the 15 and the 3. So divide through by the 3, give me 5. Divide through by this 3 to give me 1. And then divide through by 2 up here, 2 down here. And that leaves me with 5 over 2 multiplied by 1 over 1. 1 over 1 is just 1. So I'm going to write this as 5 over 2. All right, our next example involves working backwards. A number divided by 3/5 gives 20. What was the number? We're going to introduce a little bit of algebra. We're going to say let x be the number. And we're then going to take this second line and turn it into an equation. A number, we said that was x, divided by 3/5. So when I do x divided by 3/5, this gives 20. In other words, it's equal to 20. What I can then do is use my knowledge of inverse operations to figure out this question. A number divided by 3/5 is equal to 20. If I wanted to undo the division by 3/5, I would have to do the inverse of that, which is to multiply by 3/5. And if I do something to one side of my equation, I have to do it to the other side of my equation in order for it to be equal. Now on the left-hand side, I've taken my number, I've divided it by 3/5, and then I've multiplied it by 3/5. So these cancel each other out, and it just leaves me with my number. What I can then do is do my right-hand side. 20 multiplied by 3/5 is the calculation I want to do. Now I want to do 3/5 of 20, or 20 multiplied by 3/5. Let's quickly think about what 1/5 of 20 is. Well, that would just be 20 divided by 5, which is 4. So 3/5 of 20 is equal to 3 lots of 4, which is 12. So my number x is 12. Pause the video and give this question a go, and just be a little bit careful because it is slightly different to the one that I did. Okay, let's go through it. A number multiplied by 3/7 gives 30. What was the number? Let's say let x be the number. And this number x multiplied by 3/7 gives us 30. It's equal to 30. And same as before, I want to do inverse operations. If I've taken x and multiplied it by 3/7, the inverse of that, or to undo that, I would divide by 3/7 on both sides. The reason I do it to both sides is so that it remains equal. On the left-hand side, I've multiplied by 3/7 and then divided by 3/7, so these cancel each other out, and it just leaves me with my number x. And then on my right-hand side, I need to do 30 divided by 3/7. 30 divided by 3/7 is the same thing as 30 multiplied by the reciprocal, which is 7 over 3. So I need 7/3 of 30. Let's think really quickly what 1/3 of 30 is. Well, that's just 30 divided by 3, which is 10. So 7/3 of 30 is 7 times 10, which is 70. So my number x is equal to 70. Our last example is a worded decimal fraction problem. So 1.5 liters of paint covers 3/4 of a wall. How much paint is needed to cover the full wall? I'm going to set it up like this. 1.5 liters of paint covers 3/4 of the wall. And what we want to do is we want to scale on the right-hand side so that it's actually equal to 1 full wall. I'm going to write 1 wall here. And what I can do is I can think, what did I do to go from 3/4 to 1? Well, I divided by 3/4 because 3/4 divided by 3/4 is 1. So what that means is I'm going to do my 1.5 liters divided by 3/4 as well. 1.5 divided by 3/4. And it's helpful to turn 1.5 into a fraction first. So 1.5 is 3 over 2. And I'm dividing by 3/4. 3 over 2 divided by 3/4 is equal to 3 over 2 multiplied by the reciprocal of 3/4. So that's 4 over 3. And then what I can do is I can start to simplify these fractions. So divide through by my factor of 3 on the numerator and on the denominator, and divide through by my factor of 2 on the denominator and 2 on the numerator up here. I've got 1 over 1 multiplied by 2 over 1, which is just equal to 2. I then need to put that number 2 in the context of my question. Well, it was the number of liters needed to paint one wall. So my answer would be 2 liters to paint the wall. Pause the video and give this question a go, and then we'll go through it. Cable of length 27 over 2 meters is cut into pieces, each measuring 4.5 meters. How many complete pieces of cable can be cut? What we're really asking here is how many times does 4.5 go into 27 over 2? And that can be represented by this calculation, 27 over 2 divided by 4.5. In other words, how many times does the short piece of cable go into the long piece of cable? To do this question, we want to have both of our numbers as fractions. So I'm going to turn 4.5 into a mixed number to start with. And then I can do 4 multiplied by 2 to give me 8. Write that over my denominator of 2. In other words, 4 is 8 over 2, and then add on my half. 8 halves add 1 half is 9 halves. So that's what 4 1/2 is. I'll rewrite my original calculation. I've got 27 over 2, and I'm dividing by 9 over 2. I can then say that 27 over 2 divided by 9 over 2 is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. And then at this point, I can do my cross simplification. I'll divide through by a factor of 9 on the numerator. 27 divided by 9 is 3, and 9 divided by 9 is 1. And then I can also divide through by my factors of 2. So divide through by 2 on this numerator and 2 on this denominator. And what that leaves me with is 3 over 1 multiplied by 1 over 1. Well, 1 over 1 is just 1, and 3 over 1 is 3. That gives me an answer of 3. The last thing to do is just to put that in the context of the question. How many complete pieces of cable can be cut? My answer is 3 pieces. That's my answer. If you're using our lesson booklets, you can now complete exercises 2 and 3. Thank you for watching this video.